This is after class on Tuesday when we're in the glaze room, and I've got all your test tiles and I've got all the glazes out that we have, all the high fire glazes. The glazes all have to be mixed up. The tiles are all clean. I rinsed them off the day before so they could be nice and dry and absorbent. And what I'm doing is going through and applying a coat of glaze to each tile, about 2-second dip for each one, and then coming back and dipping it a second time, but only halfway. So the whole tile has a 2-second dip, and the top half of the tile has the equivalent of a 4-second dip. So we should get a variety of sort of enough glaze and maybe a little heavier saturation. It's really important that the glazes be mixed up, even if you're working with it for a short period of time. If you walk away and 5 or 10 minutes goes by, it's important that you give it a quick stir again, because there are no sort of additives or things that would suspend pigments and paint in these glazes that we've made from scratch, from just the natural materials. So once everything's glazed, then I'm numbering them, and then I'm going to pack them all up and clean them up and clean up the workspace and carry them out to the kiln room, where I'll be describing how to load the kiln. See you out to the kiln yard. Hi, I'm here in front of the little kiln that we were looking at the other day, and I'm getting ready to load all the test tiles and some other work into it. It's about 20 to 5. I've been glazing the test tiles since this morning, since I met with some of you, and it takes a while. It is tedious, and then there's always cleanup. So now that everything is dry, it's ready to go into the kiln. The ones that didn't have numbers on them, so we'll be able to recognize them when they come out. I've written down what the numbers mean. So in loading the kiln, there's a couple of things I want you to think about. One, these kind of kilns, while they do have an electronic pyrometer, which gives us some heat, we have to fire it manually. And so the first thing you need to do is to put these guys in. Well, not these guys, because these guys have already melted, but brand new cone pack. And then again, this is 8, 9, 10, 11, and I'm going to put this on the side here in front of a peephole. That's a spy hole, or where I can pull the brick out and see what it's doing. I'll have some idea. The next thing I need to think about is how I'm going to stack the kiln, and I want to stack it evenly, and I want to get things together that are the same height. And so usually what I'll start with is just grabbing a post, a kiln post, so that I'll know that anything that I grab to put in there is going to be below that height. So usually I'll have one of these on the shelf, and oftentimes I would have you guys helping me normally. A couple of people would be passing me things, and they would have this post, and they would be looking at that. And I would be loading the stuff in until you guys got a better sense of it. So a couple of things to think about. We want things that are close to that height, so we're not wasting space. And so when I look at this, that looks pretty good. That's a full inch. And that's plenty of room for the glaze to sort of bubble up and flatten down. I don't want to get too close. I wouldn't want something like just barely over it, because I would be worried about the glaze bubbling up and kind of kissing the bottom of the kiln shelf that I'm going to put above it. So be aware of that. So we're going to start with this. I'm going to lay out 3 posts, leave this one here, in the kiln, and every layer, the post needs to be above a support below it. You've got to think sort of like an engineer. You don't, especially at high fire, we don't want to have a kiln post and, I don't want to have a post like this, a post like this, a shelf across here, and another post on top of that, because that will break the shelf. So if we pretend that this is a shelf, for instance, and then I put my post here, that's going to be, when this kiln gets up to 2300 degrees, that's going to put so much stress on that kiln shelf that it's going to set a crack up, and it can even cause it to collapse. So it's really important that you be thinking about engineering. So one post goes above it. In the bottom of the kiln, we've got bricks. And so there's 3 lines of them, and it's very important that that first row of posts, the column I should say, is going to line up with that. So I put one in the back here, right where you can see the top of the exit. And then I'm going to split, there's 2 shelves in there, one in front of the other, and I'm going to span that shelf with one post so that I can catch 2 2 shelves next. And then the last one, I'm not going to put in yet. I'm going to hold off on that just because I might knock it down while I'm loading. And so basically, those are the primary concerns. You've got post height to think about. You've got kiln shelves. You want to make sure the bottoms of are clean. I talked about that before. You want to make sure the kiln wash isn't falling in. So again, sorry, this one looks a little flaky, and I want to make sure there's no loose little bits of it that are stuck on the bottom that might drop into the wear below it. These nice bowls, and that's about it. So I'm going to switch over now to get my iPad up and do a time-lapse thing instead because it's just going to be tedious. But just to kind of touch base on the overall, my plan is to get this thing going and fire it off tomorrow, and hopefully, fingers crossed, it'll fire off early enough tomorrow that it'll be cool enough on Thursday that we'll be able to peek in there during class. All right. With that kiln post on the wear cart, I can compare everything that I'm loading into the kiln with it for height so that I don't have to worry about an object being too high and being crushed by the kiln shelf as I load it in. Everything large goes in first, and then the smaller little objects, your test tiles, are fit in around them. There's a fair amount of adjusting and puzzling of making sure everything fits, and some balancing with some of the tippy test tiles where I'm having to prop them so they don't fall over, and hopefully there won't be too many of them that have become conjoined twins. Even if they do, I'm sure we can get them apart so that everyone gets their own test tiles back. With everything in the kiln, I put the cone patzer in. I'll be able to track the progress of the firing, and again, as I said before, hopefully everything will work out just fine, and we'll find out tomorrow. Right, so it's loaded, the door's closed, I've started it. All I have left to do is hang this hot kiln sign on it. Tomorrow I'll come in and fire it up. Fire it off. All right.